But one of the things that I fear for you, Doug, dealing with subject matter like this, again, is there's no expectation for you to be a Catholic or even to be religious to read and enjoy this. It's a good story told well, but there are certain things that I think that wind up being more meaningful to certain parts of your reading audience that I just wish the rest would sort of be able to enjoy it with a little bit of quote-unquote instruction. I'm not saying proselytizing, but some knowledge. It's I don't think a terrible thing for people to be sort of caught up to speed. If I were doing something about a CPA, I would think functionally for the sake of the story, you'd have to talk about some things that you would do in accounting, you know. So that being said, so Alfred Hitchcock very famously made a movie called I Confess. Alfred Hitchcock is a Roman Catholic. He made a story about a priest who hears a confession of a murderer. And I really need to look this movie up. I haven't seen it probably in like 10 or so many years. But it's an interesting thing to think about in storytelling, because you have a Catholic making a movie about Catholics. Now, certainly the expectation was a lot of Catholics would watch it. I think this is the early 50s when this was. It has Montgomery Clift in it as the priest or protagonist. But, you know, a large portion of the audience was not Catholic. And what happens is, and was not really, to my memory, not explained very well for the sake of the audience who wouldn't be Catholic, is that even in these days where we have quote-unquote bad priests, one thing that is totally important is confession. It's a sacrament. And this is the point by which a sinner goes and confesses his sins to a priest. The priest acts in persona Christi. He is the avatar of Christ at the moment, at what the confession happens. And when the sins are forgiven, this is through the power of Christ himself, through the avatar, the medium of the priest. This is an incredibly important thing to understand, that what is said in the confessional is solely stuck in the confessional, is not to be passed along in any sort of way. This is what allows someone to fully confess themselves, that they may be made right with God through the intercessory powers of Christ to God the Father, with the presence of the Holy Spirit, hopefully motivating you to confess yourself. It's a beautiful thing if you believe it. And again, this is not me trying to proselytize, this is me trying to explain. I'm not a theologian. If I'm getting any of this wrong, please forgive me, as we all need forgiveness. But that being said, understand that even bad priests, to my knowledge, have not broken the vow of silence of what happens in the confessional. This is such a defining aspect of what it is to be a priest and to be within the sacramental life, that it just doesn't happen. Now, this is something that people who are not Catholic, I don't know, would readily understand the gravity of what it would mean to be in a position where if someone confessed a murder to you, not only can you not report this to the police, but you can't tell anyone really about what's going on, not in any specificity. Excuse me, you know what I'm trying to say. Specificity. I give up. There are dogs barking. I'm distracted. Anyway, the stakes of this are incredibly high. This is the most important, one of the most fundamentally important relationships between the flock and the shepherd, right? This is you and God in meeting, and that this is a vow that cannot be broken. Cannot be broken. for the sake of everyone, in order to have them fully give themselves to Christ. All right. Most people can't understand this. A lot of the audience it did not compute with them why this priest would be in a situation where someone confessed to murder. This guy not only is not going to turn himself in, but is looking to commit more crimes. And this became a source of consternation with the audience, that they could not have it in their mind why this priest was not telling the police that this guy committed the murder and you got to stop him. But the priest's job in this case was constantly trying to convince this man to turn himself in, to get right with God, to stop what he might do, and understand that this puts him in a position where, because he will not break his vow, that he's putting in one idea others in jeopardy. Justice is not being served, and this is a great conflict. Now, this is the centerpiece of the story, and it's what makes the story go. And it's a tragic thing. Anytime that a sinner is living in sin, in the enthrall of sin, it's a tragedy. This is the nature of what makes a hero and a villain in some respects. And so that was lost on an audience. The audience rejected the movie, and the movie did not do well. It's a good movie. It's a great Hitchcock movie. It's a true thriller. But the essence of what really made it work, the dynamic of it, wasn't understood. And Doug, I just say all these things because you're swimming in the waters where I fear, and again, maybe your audience is a lot more savvy than I'm necessarily giving them credit, but I would just worry that some explanation, I think, would help understand the stakes of what's happening with your character and characters a little better. So just learn from Hitchcock. Something everyone should be mindful of. And it's not just because it's religious matter, doesn't matter. You could be telling a story, like I say, about an accountant. If they don't have certain concepts in mind, then they can't understand the jeopardy that our hero is placed in, and understanding the hurdles and obstacles that they have to navigate and get past for the sake of victory in this case. So that's a lot of time spent on one panel, but as I say, I think it's worth it. And for any of the other people watching this, I hope you understand where I'm coming from, is that for the ends of the story, certain knowledge has to be given to the audience to really appreciate what's going on. And I love this book, and I just say it because I want to make sure that everyone can get the full depth out of what's being offered. So I take it at that. So we see the Just Some Diner, little tip of the cap to Just Some Guy. Again, check him out. He's does fantastic reviews. And so we have Chua and our protagonist, Father Retter, are discussing things. He just got chewed out by the bishop, and he and Chua are discussing their case with the various occult things. And as we see in the background, again, I want to say, Tim, we're seeing this extreme 3D, three-point perspective. And again, we're seeing that the world is not right. That's how I'm reading this, and I think it's a nice choice. If you were filming this, you would do it with sort of a fisheye lens to just make sure that you understand that the world that you're in, something ain't right. And we see off the background this figure, this dark figure, that then is going to walk up. And you see, the fetish object, the black matches in the hand of our heroes here. Chua actually is picking it up and has it in his hand. And this is a form of the seduction. And then I think this is a nice device, without having to show angels and demons on the shoulder, if you will, that we have this nameless and more or less faceless person come up and then whisper. Now, is this guy a real guy? Is this, he is noticed by Father Retter as seeing a moment of possession. it doesn't really matter for the sake of moving the story along. But I like that it does sort of invite the powers of evil working in mundane ways, that we have a whisper to the ear, and you have a stillness happening. And then Father Retter, as the man walks past, "What did that man just say to you?" "Who? Wonder what's so special about these." "No!" And of course, whoosh, the demon is already at work against Father Retter and against Chua. And he's put it into Chua's mind to strike the match. And the match is the entry point by which they are brought into the demon's realm. This is a really nice device in getting the story moved to that place. And then what we see first is that Father Patrick is harmed first. This is kind of interesting detail I really didn't think about before. Pat, what's wrong?" And then thud, thud. And of course, we see the guy exiting. This may have been an actual manifestation. Probably that's what's being hinted at now that I think about it. That this is a creation. The demon has put on the guise of a man, and is then, or one of his lieutenants or something, and has put the suggestion out there so that a demonic attack can happen, because Father Retter's been snooping and causing problems for the demon's work.